list here as they show up. So we're going to go ahead and start off with a hearing on Senate Bill 739 and 769. So if both those sponsors could come up.
Mr. Chairman, before that happens, I
Sure.
just wanted to say I'm going to stay for just a few minutes, but because this isn't our regularly scheduled time, I've scheduled previously meetings, so I'm going to duck out. And
I guess we can text you whenever we need a quorum.
yeah, just let me know because
Right.
I've got other appointments in my office that were previously scheduled before the hearing was set.
All right.
Thanks.
Senator, do you have your numbers?
I have it.
Oh,
Yeah. And then for any witnesses, if you can please note whether you're testifying for both bills or for or against, or if it's just one of them. So, who wants to go first? You guys have a preference?
Mine's lower numbered, so I will be happy to go first. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senators. For the record, I'm Mike Cierpiot from the 8th Senate District in Jackson County, presenting Senate Bill 739. I think both these bills are nearly identical. This bill affects Kansas City area and the Kansas City area only. In 1986, the original law was passed. The same issue triggered it, a proposed landfill in Kansas City. The law was intended to protect the municipalities nearby. At the time, it was a pretty rural area, and a 1/2 mile setback was protective enough. In the 37 years since, the populations in the areas around Kansas City has exploded. Thousands of people now reside where dozens did then. The law simply extends the 1/2 mile barrier to 1 mile. Municipalities within 1 mile of a landfill will be included in any creation of a landfill. This doesn't use state law to kill anything. It simply says property owners nearby who have much of their assets tied up in their houses must be included in the decisions. You'll hear proponents of the landfill that they have already bought property. That is true, but only a few acres. If the proposed trash dump threat ends, that land will increase in value for resale. I've heard a lot of talk about the sanctity of property rights, and I agree. Thousands of families have built their lives in southeast portion of my district, and all they want is to be left alone to raise their families. And finally, let me just say that MARC, the Mid-America Regional Council, has finished their study. MARC represents 119 cities in our counties. They have found that we have between 19 and 37 years of landfill capacity exists today, depending on what scenario you use. Of the 7 landfills used, all have additional space and years available at their sites. They all plan to expand as space is needed. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I'll let Senator Brattin give his testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Rick Brattin, 31st Senatorial District, with Senate Bill 769. As Senator Cierpiot stated, they're basically identical. This is a state issue. This is one thing that the legislature, not just 37 years ago, but over 52 years ago, developed a law to protect the area of Kansas City just due to its the way that it goes in and about other communities, and it was originally set up as a commission to where each county that surrounds and touches the Kansas City metro region, they all sat on a committee for anything dealing with landfill, and they all had to come to an agreement whether or not a landfill was necessary in this area or not, and propose and vote and adopt whether or not to move forward with a landfill. 37 years ago, that was changed to where it's a 1/2 mile buffer zone. But given the size and scope of what landfills are today, even as opposed to what they were 40 years ago, I think lends the need and necessity to extend that to a 1-year buffer zone to protect communities. It's been extraordinary, honestly, through this process. I mean, I honestly thought this would be one of those bills that, as in many other instances, if it's specifically dealing with a particular senator's district, this would be just done. No ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, it's protecting a senator's district. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. We have media here. We've seen one of the largest uprisings of a grassroots of the people of my area, Senator Cierpiot, Senator Razor's area, and they've formulated a pact to even kind of combat what we're dealing with here in Jeff City. To try to protect their community. I mean, it's been actually extraordinary, and I'm humbled and I'm blessed to represent such a vocal people that are, they realize what's going on, and they just want us to do the right thing and to protect their community and not put a stop to it, but give them a say in whether or not their property values, their schools, their churches, and everything they've invested in is protected. That is what government is supposed to do. It's supposed to ensure that people are able to protect their rights, freedoms, and liberties, and property rights are foundational in that. If we don't do that, then what are we doing here? And I especially think that a big, giant heaping lump of trash that you're staring at would be detrimental to that. Not to mention that the health hazards. You're going to hear a lot of testimony of the science and the health detriments that come with landfills. It's not just property values, but first and foremost, when you have people that have developed these communities and spent millions and millions of dollars to have this amazing area to live and prosper, to have it destroyed because people think that they can go and plant a flag in a certain area of a city and put up a landfill. By the legislature's intent 52 years ago, they said that no, it's not a private investor's capability to do so. It's a regional decision for all stakeholders. And I think the biggest stakeholders are those that are going to be affected most, and that's the property owners. But also the development and everything that this completely destroys in our area. We've seen a lot of businesses that have opted not even to come to Cass County and surrounding areas because of the landfill. And to think that a landfill that could potentially be there for 60, 70, 80, 100 years, what it could do to our community is it's devastating. Again, this should not even have reached year 2, but here we are. I hope and I pray that the committee and the members of this body and the other side of the building see this as a necessity to pass and protect my community. Happy to answer any questions, and thank you for this time.
Questions for either bill sponsor? Senator Washington.
Thank you all for being here early and everybody else. I have questions for both. So as we talk about this is the same bill from last year, Senator. And I know you kept saying in your district, but the landfill itself actually is not in your district, correct?
Well, the effects would be direct to my district.
And
Yes.
tell me how.
Well, because it would be literally right up against a really thriving community, a development right there called Creekmore. This year we had a golf tournament to try to raise money for their PAC to be able to hire a lobbyist. We had the floor leader of the House. He was on my golf team. And when we were standing there playing golf, we were like, oh, I'm sorry.
Keep going.
We were, I was like, right there is where the proposed landfill is. And he couldn't believe. He's like, you got to be kidding me. There is no way that anybody would think that would be a good location for a landfill.
Now, have you been to the site?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. So, if you are on, what's the street where Creekmore borders against?
155th.
Okay, so it's not actually on 155th though, right?
So if you're standing where Creekmore, where their clubhouse is, you can see where the hill is to where that proposed site would be.
And how far is it actually from Creekmore?
It's just over half a mile, and that's why we're having to extend it to basically where it would be a mile.
Okay. The other thing is, are there any landfills in that community now?
No.
At least Summit has one that's closed. And I'm glad you brought that up, Senator, because last year was talked about how that didn't hurt anything. I actually drove around there this year, and that landfill is exactly why this is a bad fit, because if you go to the existing, which has been closed now, I think they closed it 6 years ago, and they're capping it, there's nothing developed around there, east, west, or south of that old landfill. I think
Except for, isn't there a school right there?
There's a school not far away.
No,
but
there's
that
a
is on
school
the-
right there,
It's
like
a-
literally the landfill's in the backyard of the school,
You can
right?
see the landfill, but it's not right. I mean, I've been to the school because I want to see how far
Me
away
too.
was.
It took me
Okay.
25 steps to walk from the school the back of the school to the landfill, to the Lee Summit landfill.
To the property edge, maybe, not the trash hump. Right.
No,
With that
but
big
to,
pot,
yeah.
right.
And
I
then you
didn't-
could see, and you
yeah,
could see
right.
it.
You can't see it clearly. But that is closed now, and I believe when they built the school, I'm not sure if that closing date was known at that time or not, because that school's been there a while. But the development.
So it did operate while the school was,
It did.
okay.
But north of the landfill is the only development, and that's been the last 10 to 15 years. They got a Home Depot there and several homes, several subdivisions, but east, west, and south is just like it was back when the landfill was planned. Just like it is in rural areas, a house on 5 or 6 or 8 acre lots. And so I think that's a good idea of what happens when a landfill goes in. The development stops in the area.
Okay, and then one more question. Senator Brattin, you mentioned about that it's a regional decision. Is there some legislation, whether that is county, municipal, or that supports that mandates that it has to be a regional decision, or is that just like a handshake?
Well, the original, that's what I was speaking to, was the original, what was passed into law was a regional committee that would decide that of all the surrounding counties.
Can you point out where that says that it has to be a regional committee?
Well, that's what used to be law. Now it's the half-mile buffer. I use that as a
Okay.
preface to say that, to say that this was never an issue to where people didn't have weigh-in or say whether a landfill went in the area. That's not true. It was morphed into the half mile, giving each community surrounding there kind of that initial veto power of whether or not they wanted it, there. So this just extends that just due to the impact, the area impact.
So with that said, the developers of this landfill, did they come to the individual communities, Belton, Raymore, South Kansas City, Lee Summit, Grandview, or whatever, to get input before they did this?
No.
It's not required today. Kansas City's the only one that has, that it's going to be more than a half mile in Kansas City, so they're the only ones they have to deal with today.
Okay, and did they go to Kansas City at all?
I don't know officially what's been done, because every time I talk to Kansas City, either Mayor Lucas or anybody else, there's a lot of gray area. So I don't know officially where they are in the permitting process.
Well, I
And
believe that they had, Kansas City last year, if I recall, with Senator Brattin, we negotiated with him, the Kansas City senators, that there would be, in the city of Kansas City, that there would be a hold.
There's
So no
moratorium.
permits would be
Temporarily, right.
given for at least a year.
And
So
the
we're
mayor-
not at the year yet, so.
And the mayor, he followed through and he lived up to his word, and I commend him and Kansas City for doing so, definitely. Now, on the permitting process, no, there hasn't been public input. They have not even started the beginning stages of the landfill permit process through DNR, which is really where it starts. From what I understand, they have not went to Kansas City to start any of the rezoning process whatsoever.
What's the land zoned as now?
It's residential rural, R80, I
Okay.
believe. So
Okay.
it would have to be rezoned to an industrial.
And that has not been done to your knowledge?
Correct.
Okay.
Senator
Senator.
Washington, if I just comment on the regional aspects of this, I believe that
Hey, we're gonna pause right here to take roll. I hate to cut you off, but
that's okay.
Senator Gannon, Senator Crawford, Senator Carter, Senator Coleman, Senator Koenig,
here.
Senator Rizzo, Senator Washington.
Here.
All right, we've established a quorum. Proceed.
Thank you. And just let me say, Senator Koenig, you look angelic with that light behind you. I can't really see you. Senator Washington, the regional aspects of this, I think the time of putting a landfill in almost any place in the state, but particularly in a suburban, urban area, of doing that on your own is over. I think Mark should be in the middle of anything that we do like this in our area.
And for those who don't know, Mark being our Midwest,
Mid-America Regional Council.
Mid-America Regional Council
They
that
lead
works
in-
on these things.
Whether it's transportation or trucking or anything else, Mark takes a leadership role. And I believe if our region ever actually had a problem with capacity on landfills, Mark would be leading the parade of locating where it should be and getting the site going. And so I think times have just changed as far as just somebody saying, I'm going to put a landfill in, and that's the way it works. So thank you.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions for the bill sponsors? Yep, Senator Carter.
Senator Cierpiot, you were talking just about Mark. Tell me how that process works. If somebody did want to create a landfill or build a landfill, would they approach Mark? And is that part of the process then?
It is not now. I've actually talked to Representative Hafner, and once we get this behind us, whatever way it goes, he's talked about we need to revisit that whole chapter, because they absolutely, right now, there is nothing requiring that, and I think it should be. That something like Kansas City and the 9 counties there, if they decide they have a need on something like this, they should be the ones. It'll still be a private business when they decide what they need and where they need it. But I think Mark should be the ones telling people it's time for a landfill. And if we change state law, that's what they'll do. There's districts around the state now. They've just never been very active or empowered to do what probably needs to be done.
Thank you.
Any other further questions? Seeing none. All right, we do have a list of people that are going to be testified for and against, and then after that, we'll open it up to everyone else. So if that first group who are going to testify in support, if they can come forward. So we have Rick Myers, Steve Brooke, and a professor at the University of Kansas City Medical School. If you,
Senator, I'm going to give up my seat, okay?
all right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, and we are going to. Yep. Go ahead.
I had numerous, I know with the email, but with inclement weather and everything, I had, tons of people that could not make it, at least to show that, people wanted to. Whether or not the committee adopts that, I would hope you would.
Yeah, in order to be reported into the committee, you have to physically be here. So,
Mr. Chairman, I do apologize. I have that previously
Yes.
scheduled commitment. Thank you very much.
all right, we're going to limit to 4 minutes per person, and we have a timer here. So, who wants to start?
I'll start.
All right, proceed.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senators. My name is Rick Myers. I'm a Kansas City, Missouri resident who lives approximately 1 mile from this proposed landfill site. I'm here representing thousands of my neighbors who have either followed our Facebook page, signed petitions, put signs in their yards, attended HOA meetings, or many numerous public gatherings, all in opposition to this landfill. I built my home in 1994 to raise my family and, God willing, retire there. At that time, the area plan was focused on the environmental and recreational development of Jackson County's Longview Lake and the Little Blue River. It provided a vision, a plan, and zoning to the citizens for what they invested in and where they chose to live. Neighboring municipalities and counties leveraged that plan to expand and grow their adjacent communities. Fast forward to current day, we're all still in disbelief that something like this would even be considered inside a residential community. Progress, community need, property rights. Those are the things you're going to hear from the developer. Well, it's really none of those things. A landfill in a neighborhood has far-reaching implications. Development stops, homeowners move away, stores close, blight ensues. This is a vicious cycle. It's not progress. Community need, that hasn't been proven either. To Senator Cierpiot's point, we're getting ready to hear a full report from Mid-America Regional Council that says we have an extensive runway to get this figured out, many, many years to get this figured out. And finally, property rights. Me and many of my neighbors have owned property in this neighborhood for decades. Why is it that one person can come in and destroy what thousands of people have worked their entire lives for? Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. said, "My right to swing my fist ends where your nose begins." This quote illustrates the harm principle, which basically says one person's right cannot infringe on another's right. And that's what we're talking about here. Their right to put in a harmful landfill next door to a school and in the middle of a growing neighborhood does not usurp my and my neighbor's rights to our property, to breathe clean, toxin, and odor-free air. For me and the people I've met over the last year, every day is another day of agony. Some people have moved, but others can't. Most don't want to leave because this is their home. They have or are still raising their families here. Many have modified their homes due to medical issues or due to children with special needs. We have veterans, retired folks, widows, and cancer survivors who simply want to stay in their family home, but may not be able to due to the increased risk. Because studies show that landfills near population centers are dangerous. In fact, none of the 37 major U.S. cities with populations over 500,000 have cited a landfill within their city limits for over 30 years. In fact, many have closed them. Yet here we are. In closing, before you today are experts, citizens, and leaders of area communities representing thousands of their neighbors who just want to get back to their lives and stop worrying about the harmful effects of what one person wants to do in an area they don't even live in. These people want to protect their homes, their families, their children. They want their dinner table conversations to be about family and friends and future plans, not of greed and the filth and devastation that a landfill will bring near their home. We're not asking for new legislation. We're simply asking for a modification to an existing law that will help protect the health, safety, and prosperity of thousands of Missourians, and basically ask for folks to be good neighbors. You passed this out of committee last year with overwhelming support. We are grateful to you for that, and we ask for that support again. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Yeah, proceed.
Hi, thank you for coming again, Mr. I'm sorry, real quick. You said you've lived in the area since 1994?
Yes, ma'am.
Where exactly do you live?
I'm 1 mile from the proposed site at the corner of
East, west, north, south?
just west.
Okay. So how far are you from Sunset Valley Elementary School?
Sunset Valley.
Uh-huh.
I'm not familiar with Sunset. Are you referring to Summit Point Elementary?
I think it's called Sunset Valley. It's where the current landfill is.
Is that in Lee Summit?
It is.
I'm not close to the Sunset.
Okay, so you're about a mile and a half or two, because it's about a half a mile or 0.6 mile from this proposed site.
Let me clarify. Summit Point Elementary is the landfill that's is the elementary school that's directly
Okay,
across the
it's
street.
just called Sunset Valley. Okay.
It's called Summit Point.
The school is, the landfill's called Sunset Valley.
I've not heard that.
I don't know, that was the name of the sign when I saw it, so when I drove around.
I've
Okay.
not heard that name, but
Okay, so that landfill you don't feel had any effect on you, because how far away are you from that particular
that
landfill?
particular landfill in the Lee Summit landfill you're referring to is probably over 5 miles away. I don't.
Not if you only live a mile from the the proposed landfill, because it's not 4 miles from there. It literally is about a mile, 0.6 at the most, or something like that. It's not 4 miles away from the proposed landfill.
So Senator.
And although I'm asking questions on both sides, I'm neutral, but it's not, in order for you to be 5 miles away from the closed landfill, you'd have to live 4.2 miles away
I've not
from the
done-
current landfill, and it's not.
I've not done the math to the current landfill.
Okay.
I do know that I'm 1 mile west of the proposed landfill site, and the existing landfill, the landfill that recently closed in Lee Summit, is at 291 and 50 Highway, which
No,
is,
it's not that. It's nowhere near that far, but go ahead.
I don't know the mileage, but
Okay.
it's several miles away. I think it's outside the 5 mile ring, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I can
It's
check
not, but that's okay. If we don't know it, that's fine. Because I wanted to know, like, if you had an issue with that. And then what neighbors do you represent? What neighborhood, what community are you coming?
I specifically represent the South Longview neighborhood community.
Okay.
But over the course of the last year, I've met neighbors through HOA meetings in Winterset and Lee Summit and Hawthorne Hills and Eagle Creek and Raintree Lake, Creekmore and
Things that
Greenview
are a
and
little
Belton.
further east. Okay.
Yes, thousands of neighbors I've met over the last year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, further questions for this witness? Seeing none. All right, who's up next?
I'm next.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Steve Jeffrey. I'm an attorney with Jeffrey Law Group in Chesterfield. I am also special counsel for the city of Raymore. I'm here today to make 3 points in support of both of these bills. First, there really is no documented imminent need for a new landfill in this region. Based on data published by EPA, I have a copy which I'll leave with the committee, there are decades of capacity remaining at the landfills in the Kansas City area. and this conclusion is completely consistent with the recent findings, which were only announced a few days ago, of the MARC study, which was done in connection with Burns and McDonald. For example, the Central Missouri landfill in Pettis County is anticipated to last through 2043, the Courtney Ridge landfill through 2041, the St. Joseph landfill through 2070, and the Show Me Regional landfill through 2048. As we just testified, there is a very long runway in which to make a decision on this important issue. The second point I'd like to make is establishing a 1-mile buffer for new landfills in this region is not, quote, changing the rules in the middle of the game, unquote. The reason this is because the landfill developers have no legal vested right in the buffer remaining to be only a half mile. The law in Missouri is well settled that in order for someone to have a vested right, in other words, to be a non-conforming use, that changes in the law don't apply to them, they have to establish a lot of things and jump through many, many, many hoops, which in this case hasn't happened. In one case example that I'd like to point out to the committee, and I have a copy of this court opinion as well, this is from the Court of Appeals in Kansas City in 1990. There is a proposed landfill developer in Lafayette County who spent considerable amount of money in terms of land acquisition, planning, equipment leasing, test borings, permit fees, and that developer even got to the point of submitting an operating permit to the DNR. In that case, the Court of Appeals found that that particular developer, despite having done all of that, was not exempt from a change in the law. And my final point is that it is reasonable for the legislature to allow cities within 1 mile of a proposed site to consider the effects of the landfill. There are numerous peer-reviewed, published scientific studies to the effect that a landfill can affect a radius between up to 3 to up to 5 miles from where the landfill is located. And these peer-reviewed scientific studies have found impacts in terms of public health, respiratory diseases, lung cancer clusters, environmental impacts in terms of odors, dust, runoff into the watershed. In this case, this is in the Longview Lake watershed, a protected water body. And finally, as indicated a few moments ago, they're documented to have decreased impacts on property values, and people will have difficulty selling their houses. These are all documented in the literature. And as I indicated, I am leaving copies of the excerpts of the EPA findings and this court case for the committee. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? All right, seeing none.
Good afternoon. My name is Brooke Moorhead. I'm the principal of Summit Point Elementary in the Lee Summit School District. Our school consists of 545 students and nearly 70 faculty. Thousands of people live within our elementary school boundaries, and our school continues to grow as residential developments move closer to our campus, albeit slowed by this landfill threat. I appeared before this committee last year to support giving a voice to impacted communities when generational decisions are made. I'm here again asking for your support because the impacts to the students, staff, and community have not changed in the past year. It's my responsibility to care for the health and welfare of the students at our school and create an environment where they can thrive. This is a responsibility that I take very seriously. When I returned from Jeff City last spring, I created a presentation for our students so they were educated on the rights we have and how to get involved when there's a concern that impacts our community. In the days and weeks that followed, I had countless thank yous from kids telling me thank you for being their voice. Many of these thank yous included thank you cards, along with grateful smiles and hugs skipping down the hallway to greet me, as elementary students often do. Families also share my concerns when it comes to our children playing, learning, and growing across the street from a landfill. Here are a few reasons why. First, it's a health hazard. There's no disputing that landfills create toxic gases. Release of these gases into residential neighborhoods, and in particular so close to our school, would have a detrimental impact on our day. Second, putrid odors. Again, There's little dispute that landfills create putrid odors. Our school is directly across the street from the corner of the property where it's located. These odors will impact our school on a daily basis. It was disappointing and frustrating to hear the developer last year say she could essentially use pipes to Febreze the odor away. We all know the odors will persist. Third, traffic hazards and disruptions. The massive influx of trucks coming to the site will have safety impacts on our school. The only realistic entrances to a site like this would be Missouri 150 Highway, the same road our school fronts. The noise from the landfill operations would also be disruptive. And let's not forget, the developer has also publicly mentioned methane production, rock crushing, and aerobic digestion facilities in addition to solid waste processing. Our school is adamant in our opposition to the proposal of the landfill, but we are even more adamant in the lack of voice being given to the most impacted communities. I would ask that all senators in this room and the chamber at large to think about what we are teaching our kids. We tell them the government and elected officials are there to give them a voice in what happens in their communities. We tell students and adults to get involved when change is necessary. We tell our students that good government happens when citizens are involved, active, and communicating. Our kids don't have many positive examples of how to respectfully use their voice when there is an issue. That's our responsibility. What should I tell our kids, our families within the LSR7 community, if a bill specifically designed to allow voices to be heard doesn't even get a vote? Please keep in mind that while our school is 739 feet from the proposed property of the landfill, thousands of students are within 1.5 miles of this site, and approximately 20,000 live in a 2-mile radius. Those thousands of citizens should have a voice. This bill gives them that. In an era of significant distrust of politicians and government, transparency and accountability should be at the forefront. This bill does both. A landfill and all the consequences that come with it should be decided upon by those it will impact. Please support this legislation and allow it to get the floor vote it deserves.
Questions for this witness? Yep, Senator Carter.
So it's my understanding that this is taking the buffer from 1/2 mile to 1 mile. Is that correct?
Correct.
And this is going to alleviate all the concerns with those living within this area.
We're asking for a voice at the table.
And so this,
At the current moment, the Lee Summit School District, which is the entity I represent, doesn't have a voice because we are not technically, the city of Lee Summit is not within the 1/2 mile radius. My school, although Lee Summit School, has a Kansas City, Missouri address.
so you're advocating in behalf of this bill passage. That would allow a 1/2 mile extension into that buffer zone.
Correct.
And that would alleviate the concern that you have. Yes.
As long as we are able to have a voice at the table, yes, and be part of that mile radius.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, proceed.
Just to real quick, you stated that your school is 739 feet from the
That's correct.
where? What's your
Corner.
address?
Corner of 150 Highway and Horridge Road.
Okay, because I didn't. The closest school to where they want to do this is the Sunset Valley School.
No, we sit at Horridge Road and 150 Highway. And maybe there's a misunderstanding because we have a Kansas City, Missouri address.
No, I'm just going off of driving around
Yeah.
the place about
If I walk
25
to the
times
corner of our
in the
property,
off session.
I can look across the street to the corner of the landfill proposed site.
Okay. Yeah, text me your address. I mean, make sure I see
Sure.
the address
I
because I
got
don't
it.
see a school. The closest school I see is the school that I asked about that already has a landfill right in its backyard.
Okay.
There is no
you
school
like to
within
come
700. I have visited the site multiple
Point?
times.
You want to come visit my school?
Yeah, but I'm going to pass Sunset Valley from the way I come before I get to
Okay.
your school. And Sunset Valley is much closer than your school. So that was that was confusing for me when you said 739 feet. I'm an old track person. 739 feet, I can crawl that.
Right.
And there's nothing
Same.
within that range. And then my second question was you talked
We sit
about.
at the corner of 150 Highway, directly catty corner from the landfill proposed site.
Okay, well, I would like your address, but the other thing is you talked about increased transportation. So
Yes.
if the landfill did not develop and we had subdivisions there where the landfill is and across the highway there, wouldn't that also be increased transportation? And how would that be bad versus transportation for the landfill?
Sure. Transportation in our area is always a concern. In fact, in my last testimony, I talked about how we've asked KCMO police to come out and do a traffic study for us.
Are you in Kansas City?
We are.
Okay. But you lease some at schools?
Yes.
And y'all should pay for that.
So they
And we
did,
gonna keep our money.
they did come out, and they didn't really have any good solutions for us. Actually, what happened during COVID was we rerouted our car rider line to the back of the building. And so, you know, sometimes there's some silver linings of COVID, and that was one of them. That helped us keep traffic off 150 highway, the residential traffic we see. I don't know what the impact would be residence-wise with that, or what plans would be for expanding highways or increasing turn. I don't know all that. My immediate concern is the increase of those big trucks up and down the roads, and especially if they have to access Horridge Road.
Okay, and wouldn't big trucks still have to come through as the community becomes more developed and you have more stores, like, you know, if they want to go to Home Depot, if you put it there or something of that
I would
nature?
assume so, but I think the
I say that
impact
as
to
a
this is
kid who
bigger.
lives in the community where I-70 tore down part of our community. And so having I-70 didn't make things better. It made things worse. So because the exit is right there behind my parents' home. So that's why I'm asking you that. Like, because when we talk about transportation, it doesn't matter whether it's a landfill truck or a regular 18-wheeler or multiple SUVs, which the rich people of Lee Summit can afford. They don't have that in my district, but thank you.
All right. Any other questions for this witness? Seeing none, proceed.
Good morning, Senators. I'm Dr. Reginald Dusing, and I am here as an expert witness to present the scientific facts supporting Senate Bills 739 and 769, which essentially extend from 1/2 mile to 1 mile the minimum distance landfill can be placed near a residential community. As an expert witness, you should know that I have been a licensed medical doctor by the state of Missouri since 1975. I am certified in 4 medical specialties: family practice, radiology, nuclear medicine, and nuclear cardiology. I've been on the faculty at the University of Kansas Medical Center for the past 25 years and have extensive experience in diagnosing, treating, researching cancer, respiratory disease, cardiovascular disease, and I've delivered over 350 babies. This is relevant because there is a correlation between living close to a municipal landfill and increased risk for cancer, respiratory disease, cardiovascular disease, and even birth defects. The question at hand is, how close is too close? Because public health statistics clearly show that the likelihood of acquiring a disease in any one of those 4 categories is increased directly proportional to one's proximity to a landfill. In other words, the closer you live, the higher the risk. Now, the opponents of this bill will tell you there's no explicit distance as to what is a safe distance. Quite to the contrary, however, if you go to the National Library of Medicine website and research the medical literature, you'll find that the standard methodology for measuring distance and correlating with statistical risk is 1.25 miles. This was established by the World Health Organization in the year 2000 and has been confirmed by a host of epidemiological studies throughout the world. In addition, depending on prevailing winds or watershed drainage, the areas of risk can extend 3 to 5 miles. For example, the proposed site in southern Jackson County has prevailing winds blowing from southwest to northeast directly upwind from Summit Point Elementary and Lee Summit West High School, one of the largest high schools in the state. The winds would carry noxious gases, odors, and irritating dust for up to 3 miles, causing eye irritation and respiratory illnesses, aggravating the health of nearby citizens with COPD, asthma, or eye disease. Moreover, this very same proposed site sits at the apex of a watershed that disperses water northwest to Longview Lake, less than 3 miles away. As you remember, rainwater and groundwater running off of landfills leach cancer-causing heavy metals such as lead, lithium, cadmium, and other toxic chemicals such as benzene into the groundwater that can contaminate lakes and streams 5 miles away or further. The opponents to this bill will protest that the toxic leachate from this site would be contained by a plastic liner. What they don't tell you is that the public health literature shows that the failure rate of plastic liners is upwards of 85%. In conclusion, Senators, the health risks from municipal landfills are well documented and include increased risk for both children and adults for cancer, respiratory disease, cardiovascular disease, and birth defects. The World Health Organization scientific information suggests we change the minimum distance from a half mile to at least 1 mile for the placement of a municipal landfill away from a residential community, just as Senate Bills 739 and 769
All right,
would codify.
your 4 minutes is up.
Any questions?
Questions for this witness?
Yes, real quick. Hi, doctor. You said you were a doctor. What type of doctor are you again?
I'm a medical doctor.
I know,
am-
but isn't there like a whole lot of medical
Yes, ma'am.
specialties?
Yes, ma'am. I was a family practitioner for 15 years. I trained at University of Missouri in Columbia and practiced in the Boot Heel down at Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And then I developed arthritis and had to come back at the tender age of 42 and retrain in radiology at St. Luke's. And then I went to University of Kansas and did a subspecialty in nuclear medicine. It's called a fellowship. And then I got certification in nuclear cardiology as well.
Have you ever done environmental science or environmental studies, anything, with soil or anything of that nature to support your position?
No, what I'm quoting is the medical literature, being a scientist and having done, I've done groundbreaking research on prostate cancer, developing a new imaging agent, PET imaging agent, for detecting.
Have you done research specific to landfills?
I mean, other than searching the scientific literature in peer-reviewed journals.
Okay,
in
that's
the-
fine. I'm just trying to get
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I'll be transparent. I'm a lawyer, so before I can take an expert, I have to prove you up.
Senator Washington, that's fine.
Okay, and
You
then
asked me those
you
questions.
mentioned 2-point-something miles was more safe. So if you had to make a recommendation as to what would be the safe distance, circumference or whatever around a landfill, between the landfill and any type of development, how many miles would that be?
You want my professional opinion?
You said you
If
said you was
I-
an expert.
Yes, if I were emperor, I'd make it 5 miles. But I've got data that shows the most dangerous zone is the first mile and a quarter.
Okay, but you mentioned something about 2-point-something
Yes,
miles.
ma'am.
What was that for?
Yeah, so obviously there's different ways that the toxins can get into the environment. And one way is wind, and the other way is water. And water, the data suggests that the risk can be as high as 5 miles. And if you look at the watershed, and there's maps on the Geological Survey that actually shows that this site drains directly into the estuaries that go into Longview Lake. So you're going to be putting cadmium and benzene and toxic.
I
would need
understand that,
efficient-
doctor, but for the
I'm
sake
sorry.
of brevity, can you just tell me what that 2-point-something miles was? I'm sorry.
I'm just saying that.
You said something about the study showed that it was safer at 2-point-something miles or something like that. And if you don't recall, we can talk about it offline.
Yeah, I will. I will of course leave this printed
Okay, that'll
document
be
for you.
fine.
But basically, I said depending on the prevailing winds or watershed drainage, the areas of risk can extend 3 to 5 miles. In this particular case, Lee Summit West High School and Summit Point Elementary are right downwind. So they will get the noxious gases, the putrid odors, the dust, and all the risks of inhalation and eye disease. Longview Lake is less than 3 miles away, and the water drainage.
All right, yeah, I think you answered the question, so we're going to go ahead and
Sure.
move on. Make sure everybody fill out witness forms, put them in the middle. Now we're going to go to opposition.
And where should we leave these, sir?
Just up
Okay,
right there.
great.
If we could have David, Jenny, and Chuck. right, you can go ahead and proceed. You have 4-minute limit.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the committee. My name is David Biederman, and I'm appearing here today on behalf of KC Recycle and Waste Solutions. Now, I'm the president of Biederman Consulting Firm, which was formed last year, but before that, for 8 years, I was the executive director of the Solid Waste Association of North America, the biggest association for solid waste and recycling professionals in the country. And before that, I was the general counsel and safety director at the National Waste and Recycling Association for 18 years. So I'm very familiar with landfill operations and the concerns raised when a new landfill is proposed. So what's a landfill? It's a sophisticated, highly regulated, highly engineered waste disposal facility that manages what we all throw away. It's not a dump. The majority of the country's solid waste, and more than 2/3 of the waste generated here in Missouri, goes to landfills. They're a critical part of environmental infrastructure, and they provide an essential public service by giving a place for our trash to go. Now, the Kansas City metropolitan area, with a population of 2.4 million people, faces a serious impending shortage of waste disposal capacity. I heard the testimony earlier about what the MARC study said. I took a quick look on my phone. It draws a line, not 100 miles, but a very long distance around Kansas City and says, oh, well, waste from Kansas City might go here. And that's how they come up with 19 to 37 years. The truth of the matter is that there are really only 3 landfills that principally serve Kansas City metro area, and they have less than 13 years of capacity left. Now, that may sound like a long time, but it takes at least 5 to 10 years to plan, site, permit, and construct a modern landfill. The recent closure of Lee's Summit, which you've heard about both at the hearing last year and today, means more trash is going to these 3 landfills. And more importantly, it means waste haulers have fewer choices where to bring their trash, which causes higher prices. It's sort of like when the airlines consolidate, and now all of a sudden Southwest is really expensive. It's the same idea. There's less choice for consumers. Now, KC Recycle and Waste Solutions, the Monheiser family, is evaluating whether to construct a landfill in southern Kansas City. This committee in the state Senate is considering bills that will provide neighboring communities a veto power over whether that landfill is allowed to go forward. Not a voice at the table, a veto power. I urge the members of the committee to reject that proposal. There isn't a rational basis for giving neighboring communities additional extraterritorial authority for the siting of essential solid waste infrastructure in Missouri. There isn't actually a technical or lawful basis for allowing Raymore or others to veto a landfill that's within a mile, but prohibiting it for a landfill more than a mile away. And I heard the good doctor's testimony about this WHO study from 24 years ago that, again, I took a very quick look at, wasn't able to find, but questioned whether it applied to U.S. landfills operating under federal RCRA guidelines, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, as well as state law. So it's apples and oranges. Now, the complete lack of a rational basis for the proposed 1 mile rule is highlighted by the fact that another landfill in the same area, the landfill that recently closed, operated for 10 years in close proximity to a school without legislative intervention. Sunset Valley Elementary School is less than half a mile from the recently closed Lee Summit landfill. In addition to not having a rational basis, the 1 mile rule would be inconsistent with the laws in other states. I'm not aware of any other state in the United States that allows a local government to exercise a veto power over a proposed landfill in another local jurisdiction up to a mile away. I believe there's a 500-foot buffer rule that applies generally for land uses, both here in Missouri and in my home state of Virginia. In conclusion, KC Recycling.
All right, that's
Okay.
4 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Questions for this witness?
Of course. One, where does the trash from that community go now? And I mean from the Raymore, Belton, South Kansas City, Lee Summit area.
So Ms. Monheiser will be able to answer that more
And
specifically.
we can
but
save
there
that for her.
Okay.
You said that you had been the president of a national organization or whatever. What is the procedure in other places to open a new landfill?
So the process of opening up a landfill differs a little bit from state to state, but generally speaking, the project developer is going to acquire property or options on property and then go to the state agency that has the authority to determine whether or not that landfill satisfies certain state-specified tests. And in this instance, we haven't even gotten to that step yet, right? The Missouri DNR ultimately is one of the governing bodies that determines whether or not any particular landfill project should move forward or whether an existing landfill should be expanded. What this legislation would do is intervene with that process and say, we're not going to let the expert state agency that we created to review these types of applications have the opportunity to review that application.
In these other states, do they ever involve the community? Do they go out and do some research to determine what the community would have, and at what stage of the process is that?
So in every state, there is a public comment and hearing period where the community has the opportunity to express its issues, support, or opposition to a proposed landfill, whether you live next to the proposed landfill or 50 miles away. Missouri DNR has that same process that exists in all of these other states.
So the other states wait until they get permission from the state agency before they go out and do their community outreach?
I'm not aware of a formal process in which state agencies seek public comment before an application.
I'm not
is
asking about the
filed.
state agency. I'm asking about the developer, and I'll give you an example.
Sure.
I am now home to the world champion Kansas City Chiefs. I argue that with Senator Rizzo, but with redistricting, it's all mine now. I used to just have the parking lot. But since we had this come up last year, I went to my older family members to talk about how that, how we moved to what you all know as the sports complex. Many of my family members are familiar when it was really in my district on 20th and Brooklyn. And there was a request by the developers and Mr. Kaufman and Mr. Hunt, the owners of the respective teams at the time, to see where the city wanted to do that. The same kind of thing we're doing now, as folks think that we're going to lose the Chiefs, which we are not. Let me just put that on the record. So my point is, everything we do in Kansas City, whether we like it or not, there is some input from the community. When we built Bannister Mall, there was some input from the community, even though that was one man who sold all of that land. Mr. Benjamin owned, he's the only person who got rich off of it. But everything that you saw from 87th Street to 95th Street, from 435 over to where those apartments or whatever are now, or where the old Quick Trip was, he owned all of that land. And even though he didn't have to answer, I mean, he could just have sold his land to do whatever, the developers of that mall still came to the community prior to actually buying the land and developing or breaking ground. So I'm asking, are you telling me that nowhere in America do they do that prior to going to the state agency?
So what I would say in response to that is, unlike developing a landfill, a development of a shopping mall doesn't trigger.
I just used those as examples.
Okay, but that's the reason why that process to develop the shopping mall was different than what has happened here so far. And that isn't to say
But why is it different than developing a stadium?
because there are different types of property under state real estate, under state law, that trigger different requirements. That isn't to say that there will not be public input to the project even before an application is filed. I don't think that decision has been made yet.
Okay, we just know that it hasn't been done yet. There hasn't been any community outreach as of this time.
There hasn't been what I would call a town hall. There is information that the proponent has provided about the landfill project, the FAQs that you heard about at last year's hearing. But I would agree that there hasn't been formal feedback from the community on it.
Or even going to neighborhood associations or HOA meetings. Has there been any of that?
I would have
And I
to-
know we talked about last year in the school districts that she talked about were not adjacent to the property. So has there, since those were some of the complaints last year, has there been any of that since we were here last year on this bill?
I would have to refer that question to Ms. Monahan.
All right, thank you.
Further questions? Senator Carter.
Has there ever been a point where local communities have had veto power regarding a landfill?
I'm not aware of communities outside their boundaries having that veto power. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I'm not aware of it.
Okay. And there's been no town hall, no effort to reach out to the community members regarding this landfill as yet?
Again, I would have to refer that question to Ms. Monheiser, who can speak to that.
Okay. I'll wait for that. Thank you.
Further questions for this witness? All right, seeing none.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Jenny Monheiser. I am here to testify against Senate Bill 739 and 769. I am the owner of Kansas City Waste, or Kansas City Recycle and Waste Solutions out of Kansas City, Missouri. I am a small business owner, a mother and a wife, and a community member. These bills remind me a lot of the movie Groundhog Day, as we were here last year discussing the exact same bills. And we still have not solved the problem that we have in our region. I may be in the waste management industry, but I'm not so naive to think that people wake up in the morning and hope that somebody will knock on their door and say that there's going to be a landfill developed in their area. The fact of the matter is, though, landfills are part of infrastructure that cities need and something that we have to plan for in order to make sure that we are being responsible with our waste in our area. Kansas City produces 7,500 tons of trash per day. That's 5.4 billion pounds of trash. We have to have a responsible way to dispose of that waste. My family and I started out in the roll-off dumpster industry and saw a need in our community for a place to dispose of the stuff that is in the dumpsters. It was through that need that we developed and permitted a transfer station in Kansas City, Missouri. As I'm running and managing the transfer station in Kansas City, Missouri, I realized that very quickly we're running out of airspace in our region to be able to dispose of the waste that we have. Our trash problem is only going to get worse. Kansas City has grown since the early 2000s by 500,000 people. That trend is showing to just continue in that direction. With more people, there will be more waste. With the landfill capacity dwindling and more people coming to the area, it is our responsibility as waste management industry business owners to help find a solution for our region. That's why we went out and found a space in southern Kansas City that is a mostly rural and undeveloped part of Kansas City. This particular property is 0.8 of a mile from the closest neighborhood house and has not been developed in recent years. It is our desire to be responsible neighbors and to engage stakeholders in a way that we can all come up with a solution for the entire region. The Kansas City area, or the Kansas City citizens, are limited to 2 bags of trash per day. By the looks of some of our parks and the streets in Kansas City, that's clearly not enough. Our desire is to provide Kansas City with extra revenue to be able to help them have revenue to be able to spend on helping clean up the cities and the parks, and also be a place where we can keep residential trash pickup in proximity so that we're not having to drive it and raise cost to transport it way out of town. I would also like to address the elephant in the room that some of you have already asked about. Why have we not?
All right, that is your time.
Okay.
Senator Washington.
Just for clarification, my first question is, you indicated that Kansas City, Missouri citizens get 2 bags of trash a day.
My apologies. 2 bags of trash a week.
Yeah, I don't want anybody thinking that we have a bunch of trash. And
I'm
stuff,
sorry.
'cause we don't have that.
My apologies.
Where does the trash go now?
So we have three.
Not Kansas City's trash, the trash in the community that is against a new landfill.
So as far as I have been able to research and find, the southern part of our region, so southern Kansas City and the southern communities further south, transport their trash to Sedalia currently.
Okay. And can you just re-educate me on what a transfer station is?
Yes, ma'am. So a transfer station is just a place where you can, communities, trash companies, public people can drop off trash, but then it's transported to a landfill. And in our case, with our transfer station, we're required to transport everything that comes in out within 24 hours. So we take it in our site, in our building, and then we put it into trailers and send it to a landfill.
What landfill?
We currently use Johnson County landfill. That's
Missouri
in
or
Kansas.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we talked a lot about failure to do some community outreach and contacts. When we were here last year, have you done anything to rectify that, or have you tried to do some of that in the last year?
Yes, ma'am. We have been doing our best to reach out to community members. We actually did have a town hall. It was at the Plaza Library. One of the media stations in Kansas City organized
When did you
it.
do that?
I don't know the month. Maybe
Was it before we
recently? No,
okay.
it was after last session. It was recently.
And you
like
did
in
the Plaza,
Library,
which is on 47th and
Yeah.
Mainish, as
Yeah.
opposed to something
Well, I didn't
closer to
plan the
150.
site. I didn't plan the site. I just went to answer questions and
Who planned it?
One of the news media outlets
Oh, okay.
in Kansas City.
And you were when your time went up, you were going to make one last comment. I will use my questioning to allow you to do that.
And I think it'll answer one of the questions that you actually had earlier. The opposition of the community, the neighborhood that lives 0.8 of a mile from this proposed site, they came out very strong very quickly while we were in the process of trying to put the acquisitions piece of this together. And we've been playing catch up since then. We have started outreach, and we will continue to do so. If those people have not heard from us yet, they will. We're engaging stakeholders every week to try to make sure that we are communicating and being transparent about what we're doing.
Okay. Last two more questions, and I'll be quick. If Mark says that we have 20 years, you guys are saying less. Would you step back from this effort if it is proven that we really have 20 years before we need a new landfill?
Well, I think that we need to see the data. I think that Mark's study is showing that landfills that are really out far from outside the...
Farther than Sedalia?
Yes, some of them, yes,
Where?
absolutely.
Where are they?
Warrensburg,
Not
St.
farther than
Joseph,
Sedalia.
Hams
Warrensburg
out in
is
Topeka.
48 miles from Kansas City. Sedalia is 85.
So the Sedalia landfill has less than 8 years
Okay.
of airspace left.
What
So
other
that's-
places do you think are farther than Sedalia?
Well, I'm saying that transporting trash for the trash companies in Kansas City to Warrensburg, Topeka, St. Joseph is just not, it's not responsible with our gas emissions, but also it's just not feasible financially for companies. Those landfills, if we're going to use them, we're going to have more infrastructure and more trucks, more fuel. It's just not economically feasible for the region, for all of the region to be using landfills that are that far away.
So not to be disrespectful or mean to you, I just want to put it on the record that every place that you just mentioned is half the distance from Kansas City area than Sedalia. I used to drive to Sedalia once a week as a work comp attorney, and all of those places are less than 50 miles away, and Sedalia is quite a bit further. In fact, you pass Warrensburg
Sure.
to get to Sedalia, and St. Joe, I think, is 36 miles to the north on I-29, and I believe Topeka might be 40 miles at best. If you take I-70. My last question is, if this doesn't work for you, what will you do with all that land?
try to find out some other way to develop it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Senator.
So thank you. I commend you for having those town hall meetings. Can you tell us what the outcome of those meetings were? That town hall meeting that you said that you had?
At the plaza, yeah. So you mean, what do you mean by the outcome?
Like, what was the feedback? What was the community input?
There were very few questions and a lot of statements in the question and answer portion. You know, I think that I did my best to be transparent and let people know where we're at in the process. And so from my perspective, it was good.
How many people were in attendance?
Maybe 50.
Would you be open to having more?
Oh, absolutely. Along the way, we will. Yes.
So is it my understanding that you're going to be okay moving forward with the process and the cost of this process? And you're going to be okay if DNR further down the road comes back and says it's not a viable project? You're going to be okay at that point?
What do you mean by okay?
Well, we're
I mean,
talking-
of course, I would
They won't permit,
not prefer
basically,
that, but I'm not going to break the law, and I have no desire to do anything that's harmful to anybody. So if DNR, to be clear, if DNR says that we cannot put a landfill there, then I won't put a landfill there.
So just some of the concern I hear, right? These are just some things that I hear, is the cost that you've already invested tangibly, right? That's an expense.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you wait till you're further in the process and having DNR come back and say there's concern regarding the placement of it, or like?
You know, the preliminary findings of our team, our engineer team, would not suggest that that's what DNR would say, but that was part of one of the risks that we knew we were taking. The Department of Natural Resources permitting stage is one of the very last stages. So with any landfill development, 80% of the investment is up front. So, I mean, yeah, if the Department of Natural Resources says we can't put a landfill there, we won't put a landfill there.
So you already know the cost somewhat going in, that it's going to cost 80% up front before you even get very far along.
Yeah, I would say yes.
And then just another question. So the cost of something like this is pretty substantive. Are you in a partnership with other businesses to develop this?
No.
Or is this something that you're doing on your own?
My family.
Thank you for your question.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for the answers.
Are there any other questions for the witness? Senator?
Just a couple things. Thanks for being here. I mean, I have to admit, I'm pretty conflicted on this whole thing because I don't really like the idea that we are changing the rules in midstream. I am sympathetic to the opposing people as well. One thing that I think you mentioned to me whenever we talked offline is that you were being intimidated and people showing up at ball games that you're coaching and things like that. Would you talk about that a little bit? Or do you
So-
prefer not to?
I will say that this project has brought a lot of emotion out in some people that don't want us to put the landfill where we've proposed to put it.
Have you been threatened or I'm just curious.
Yes, ma'am. My life has changed greatly in the last year. And, you know, I don't dislike anybody that is against this project. I think people are misinformed, and I think that they're acting out of fear. I think behavior sometimes is reflective of the way people are feeling fearful. I mean, I wish that it wasn't like that, and that it hadn't gone down that road, but it has. And you know, my family and I we feel like we're doing something that's good for the community and helping in an area that we're in the industry of. And so, you know, as unfortunate as it is, but yes, that is accurate.
I don't really like hearing that because I don't think that's the way to take care of any situation. So that gives me some concern. I mean, I understand the passion as well, but intimidation doesn't go very far with me, nor do all the emails I've been receiving over the last few days. As a matter of fact, it probably has the opposite effect on me. Just a comment. Are there different types of landfills that are, and can you talk about that a little bit? Are there different types, or can you talk about, if there are, which type, so to speak, you're going to put in?
Yes, ma'am. So some landfills just take construction and demolition debris. There are several different kinds of landfills, but there's some in our area that only take construction and demo waste, which would not allow for household trash, a trash bag from your house, to be disposed of there. It's all about permitting. We're trying to permit a landfill that would take household trash, but no hazardous waste, or there's landfills that take nuclear waste. And, we're not trying to get any special permits to take waste other than household waste and construction and demolition debris.
Okay, that answers my questions. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Chuck Bird. I am the owner of Jim's Disposal Service here in Kansas City. All right. Okay. Chuck Bird, owner of Jim's Disposal Service in Kansas City, Missouri. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm here today to talk about it from a business perspective in regards to the solid waste industry. I've been in the solid waste industry for 25 years. I will tell you that in the last 12 years, I've seen 2 of our landfills closed. One is Courtney Ridge, and not Courtney Ridge, but I can't think of the name of it. It's over on the Kansas side, but also Lee Summit landfill. And so at this point right now, from my perspective, we're down to 1.5 landfills. And I say 1.5 because we have one that has a life expectancy of about 10 years. And so you have Johnson County landfill, which is on the Kansas side. And so from an operational standpoint, we are very limited to where we can take our trash. And so you either take it to a landfill or you take it to a transfer station. When you take it to a transfer station, you pay more. And so if we are forced to go outside of our region, when I say our region, our windshield time is very important to us. From the time we dispatch our trucks to the neighborhoods, get the trash on there, and take it to the prospective places, that's windshield time. We have 8 hours to get this done. And so when we have to go a farther distance, that's costing us more money. And from a small businessman's perspective, I applaud what they're doing because we have to deal with the larger companies. And the larger companies are the ones that own the landfill right now. And so we pay a premium to go and dump at their landfills, whether it's the transfer station or not. And so what I'm saying is, as I look at Kansas City's growing population, and I provide service to several thousand residents, and what I see is houses being built, and I also see schools being built. Those houses are generating trash. And if we are not prepared to take the trash to some location, we're setting ourselves up for failure. And I will share this with you. Landfills are great, but they do catch on fire, God forbid. And let's just look at it from that perspective. Our largest landfill that we have right now is probably either Courtney Ridge or Johnson County. God forbid either one of those catches on fire. We are putting ourselves in a position to deal with a catastrophic situation. If not now, then when? If not them, then who? I don't know what Mark is saying, we have all this space. I will tell you, in a 25-mile radius, we have 2 choices for landfill. Johnson County, Courtney Ridge. Johnson County, you're going to pay more because you're crossing state line. Courtney Ridge is on the Missouri side. They can only process so much because they're trying to preserve their landfill space because they're ending their life expectancy. And so what I'm saying to you is this. From a small businessman's operational standpoint, we need another landfill. Someone needs to be on the process or on the road of siting one. And I know it's development is tough, but it's necessary. And so if we don't
understand what it is that we need, then we're setting ourselves up for failure. And I know one says nobody wants it in their backyard. I agree. But for them to step out on faith like they're doing, and it's not a large corporation that's sitting at this table, but an independent person, small business owners are saying, hey, I want to lead this charge. I applaud them.
Thank you, sir. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Did you say it was Courtney Ridge? Is that the name of it? One of
Yes.
them?
Mhm.
Okay. How close are the schools and the neighborhoods to Courtney Ridge?
Well, Courtney Ridge is kind of in a industrial area. It's at 291 and Kentucky, I believe. I don't know. The closest thing to them is a golf course
Okay.
and a rock quarry, to my
Okay.
knowledge. Now, there's some other industrial businesses there, but I don't know the distance from a school or anything like that.
Or a neighborhood?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Are there any questions? Yes, Senator.
Are you aware, educate us a little bit on what these landfill fires look like? Is that something that happens often?
Well, it doesn't happen often, but what happens, it catches on fire underneath, and it burns from the bottom up. You can do some research. There's one that's been burning outside of St. Louis for several years, and I think it's still burning.
So what kind of an environmental impact would that have on a neighborhood?
Well, it's not so much it burns underneath, but you can't get to it. But I think this landfill has been in existence for several years. And I'm not sure what the maintenance issues were on it or anything like that, but I do know that they can't do that.
Are they permitted by the DNR, do you know?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, Senator?
Hi, Mr. Byrd.
Hello, Ms. Washington. Senator
Transparently,
Washington.
we know each other in Kansas City. I just wanted to, one, clarify where, what's it called? Crest Ridge? What'd you
Courtney
call it?
Ridge.
Courtney Ridge. It is in the Sugar Creek area.
Yes.
Near Independence, Missouri.
Yes.
A community that, for all intents and purposes, was already kind of destroyed by BP Amoco, correct?
Correct.
Okay. They have oil refineries that people have had cancer, and one of my law school classmates is very rich for representing those families. So just wanted to clarify that. So it's not a community with a whole lot of folks going on. You mentioned that we will need a landfill. What is the life expectancy of Courtney Ridge again?
Without getting into a whole lot of political, I believe 10 years would be safe to say.
Okay,
I'm not
and where in
sure.
Johnson County are you taking it? What town?
It's Johnson County landfill. It's in Shawnee.
Okay, because I was going to say if it was way out, then that was the same as going to Warrensburg.
No,
So-
it's about a 15, 20-minute ride from Kansas City.
Okay, so if this doesn't go, where are other options for a landfill?
From my perspective, I don't know. I mean, right now, we only have two choices as far as landfill. Courtney Ridge.
No, to build a new landfill.
To build a new one? I'm not sure on the Missouri side. The only other place that I could see would be north of the river, because we're pretty much landlocked from the south part of the city. Because you go farther south, you get into what we are facing now in Raymore and Belton, Lee Summit area. And so if you go north, then, that's the only other property that I'm aware of that Kansas City has.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you. And now we will have the second group come forward, please. Macy Thomas, Jake Lovelace, Captain Milan Rogers, and Bob Hudston. And you will each have 2 minutes. 4?
Oh, it is 2.
2.
Sorry.
Okay, I believe we'll start with Macy. Macy, you may begin.
Hello, my name is Macy K. Thomas. I am now 9 years old. I'm here today so I can help save our community from a toxic and dangerous landfill. We are scared that it will change everything about our lives. I know our voice matters. Thank you for listening to me. My mom and dad moved me and my little brother to Raymore, Missouri 5.5 years ago so we could live closer to my grandma. We never got to spend time together because our duty station was in Camp Pendleton. My dad served our great country in the United States Marine Corps for 25 years as a Cobra helicopter pilot. My dad was deployed when I was born, and I didn't get to meet him until I was 5 months old. After being exposed to burnt pits and toxic chemicals during his 4 deployments, he now suffers from constant lung infections and inflammatory diseases. He is 100% disabled veteran from the VA. It makes me sad to see him suffer. I don't want to know what will happen to the landfill, a landfill you can stop. My brother, just 6 years old, struggles with really bad asthma. We take a few trips to the emergency room every year because he suffers really bad attacks. We carry his inhaler around everywhere we go, and he even struggles today. How will the landfill help my dad and my brother? It will make them so sick. My grandma lives 3 doors down from us. She just moved 2 years ago. After living there 39 years, my grandma had a kidney transplant and gets sick very easily. She has cancer now and doesn't have an immune system. The doctor told her she couldn't live next to a landfill, and she would have to move. I don't want her to move. We get to see each other almost every day. She makes the best hot chocolate and biscuits in the morning. We craft and garden and snuggle. I love living next to her. My best friend Emma and Chloe live right next door to me. We play outside in the summertime almost every day. We swim and fish in our lake, and we golf in the summertime. The air is fresh and the water is clean, and we feel safe. I love living here.
Thank you very much, Macy.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions for Macy?
I have a question.
Begin.
So you said you're 8 years old.
9 now.
9. Did you testify last year?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you think about coming up here and testifying about your community?
I just think that it's a big deal to me, and I really don't want the landfill to go in.
Well, I would just want to thank you for coming up with your family and for you being brave enough to come and share your thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the witness? Thank you, Macy. Jake?
That's a tough one to follow.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jake Lovelace, and I'm with Griffin Riley Property Group. We're a commercial and residential real estate developer. We produce all forms of single-family and multifamily residential, office, retail, mixed-use, and industrial properties. Since 2002, when Fred DeLibero started Summit Homes, we've been located in Lee Summit, Missouri. We've made a strong commitment to Lee Summit and Raymore communities, which would be seriously affected by this proposed landfill. Our group's commitment to the KC market has meant constructing roughly 3,300 homes, creating nearly 10,000 jobs, and we have over 1 million square feet of commercial properties that are under construction right now. Much of this work has been done in the Lee Summit and Raymore areas. Huge investments are at jeopardy as a result of this landfill. Griffin Riley, as well as many others, have significant investments planned within a 5-mile radius of this property. To date, our group has overseen an estimated $94 million within 5 miles of this property, and then have an additional $450 million in future developments that are planned right now or under planning. All of our property valuations in Lee Summit and Raymore are threatened as a result of this landfill. But the detrimental impact of this landfill goes beyond that. If allowed, the future development of this ground would turn that area into a landfill, and the surrounding areas would become desolate, and it would create a void. That void would be otherwise undevelopable for the next period of all of our lifetimes. Conversely, that ground could turn into additional area for development, which would create additional tax bases and all those different things. Under any circumstance, a landfill this close to existing municipalities is poor land planning because it effectively cuts off any new opportunity for development to the area. Without growth, in most instances, municipalities never thrive again. Most oftentimes, they die. This is a thriving submarket. This particular location is immature, but it is a thriving submarket. If this landfill...
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Yes, Senator Crawford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said you're with a development group, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Just a kind of an off the wall question. Since you're with a development group, have you thought about trying to find a different location for that landfill and maybe go about it that way? Because I think, if I understood correctly, I think this group or this family would be willing to go somewhere else. So since you're a developer, have you thought about approaching it from that arena instead of this arena?
So we haven't had any discussions with this particular developer. We haven't been engaged, and we haven't engaged them. But yeah, what I would say is that for considerations of what's going on in that existing community right now, all the development that's happening in every different direction, really, I mean, they're getting it from three sides. That taking this to another location that's just slightly on the outskirts of town, where it truly is a rural location, would be supremely advantageous. I think everybody would be open to that as far as on our side of the table.
It seems like that might be a potential, from my perspective, might be a potential compromise, if you will. But I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas. Since that's your profession, I thought that might be an option.
It makes a ton of sense to me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Senator.
I appreciate Senator Crawford. Yes. Feels like Monday. I appreciate your comments because I had a similar comment or question regarding just being able to get in a room together and kind of hashing out what this might look like. Another concern or a question is, I don't know that I'm hearing a half-mile buffer is going to really be a solution to what it is that everybody's talking about.
And honestly, that's probably a better question for one of the other representatives here. From my standpoint, what that half-mile buffer does is it brings more people to the table to be able to have more interests that are then able to be discussed. From mine, as somebody that I have a project actually that's going to go in front of the Planning Commission in Raymore tonight, and it's within a mile of the location of where that proposed landfill is. And so, I mean, that would be one where if this landfill goes through, we'd have to give serious consideration if somebody wants to put in $1 million house that's within a mile of that landfill.
And it sounds like the proposed site and the owners of that proposed site are willing to sit down by their own admission to have more town halls and more investment in those conversations. So I would encourage just a mutual dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, next we will hear from Captain Milan Rogers.
Hello, my name is Milan Rogers. I live just yards south of the proposed landfill. I joined the Kansas City Fire Department in May of 1990, and as a condition of employment, we had to reside within the city limits. My dream had always been to buy some acreage and build a home. So I worked 2 jobs and brush hogged evening and weekends to save for that down payment. After years of searching, we found the perfect property just across the county line from Raymore. So my family and a handful of Kansas City firefighters pulled our money together and bought that quarter section of land. We built our homes and groomed our once cattle fields into beautiful homesteads. We've hosted firefighter weddings, receptions, and multiple family campouts next to our pond. Too many memories to mention here. I'm so humbled and proud to have served the great citizens of Kansas City. It was the best job ever. However, as it does with many firefighters and cops, it came with a price. Lost my battalion chief in a warehouse fire in '99, my driver in a wall collapse in 2015, and my firefighter a few short weeks later, all line of duty deaths. I thought I could handle it, but these events, along with 30 years of other traumas, broke me. I waited entirely too long to reach out for help. My therapist, a retired detective, suggested a program specifically for cops and firefighters called West Coast Post-Traumatic Retreat, and it saved my life. I continue my therapy still today, and along with my little 26 acres of heaven, I'll be all right. I'm asking you today, please don't let them take my safe place. We followed the rules of residency in our search for our dreams. Please don't let them change the rules on us.
Thank you. Are there questions for the witness? Yes, Senator.
How far away is your home from the proposed site?
880 feet. But they had a non-disclosure with the property that butts up to the back of my property that expired in January 1st. So possibly the back of my property.
Thank you for answering the question, and thank you for your service.
Are there any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, now we will hear from Bob.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, committee members. I'm Bob Houston. I'm presiding commissioner of Cass County. First of all, you know, the proposed landfill would have far-reaching impact for our whole community. If you haven't been out to Raymore, it sounded like Miss Washington had drove that and is very familiar with it. Even if you didn't live there, I think if you drove through it and looked at the communities that were there, you'd question why we'd put a landfill there. I think the communication up here has been brought up. We need to get together with Mark. We need to get together presiding commissioners, our senators, and we need to have a discussion on a regional solution to this problem. No one wants trash in their backyard, I get it. But that is not the place to put it. And I'm willing, I'm sure several other presiding commissioners in these other counties around Kansas City, to get together and address this problem. We shouldn't be here and asking you to have to put this law up to protect the community, but we are because people look at the dollar sign. They don't look at the communities, they don't look at the churches, they don't look at the schools. So we're here to ask you to protect those. But I, for one, would like to have a regional discussion with Mark at the table, get everyone together, and we need to fix it once and for all. So I appreciate your time. Macy, you did an awesome job. But thank you for giving me the time to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Now we will hear from the third group, and that would be Doug Stone. Oh. Is there anybody else here for opposition that did not get a chance to? Okay. Come on up. We'll take you next. Yes, make sure you fill out a witness form. Not yet. Okay. Doug Stone, Chris Turnbow, Bill Baird, and Norman Larkey. 2 minutes, and we will begin with Doug Stone.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Stone. I'm an attorney. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Doug Stone. I'm an attorney with the Lewis Rice Law Firm in Kansas City. I had the pleasure of testifying here last year and pleased to be here again. I'm here on behalf of the Creekmore Property Owners Association. We've heard a lot about the residents in the area being concerned. Creekmore is one of a number of subdivisions, although Creekmore is just across the city line to the south from the city of Kansas City. So, bear with me. I know I've only got 2 minutes. Sorry, my stupid thing here. What I want to talk about is, thank you. So, a couple of things. First, we heard a little bit about the St. Louis landfill having a fire underneath, and of course it's underneath, and so you might not actually see it. One of the unique things about this particular site that is of greater concern here is if one were to look at the general topography, as we heard earlier, everything here in terms of the water rolls down into Longview Lake, which is a significant asset to the entire region in terms of recreation and the like. And so there is a significant concern over the area to be covered. But what I really want to talk about is the fact that we're not here today talking about inventing the wheel. There already is a statute that requires the buy-in from municipalities that are within a half a mile of a site. That's the law today, half a mile. That law is about 15 or more years old, I think. We know a lot more
I'm
about.
going to give you an extra 30 seconds.
I'm sorry,
because
thank you.
it took you a while to get going.
I did it on
Okay.
purpose, thank you. I lost my train of thought. So I'm sorry, I'm having a moment.
I have a lot of those.
Longview Lake, I'm sorry, thank
Okay.
you for the member of the
Continue.
audience, I apologize. Enough of that. So, one last point, and then I'll stand for questions. We heard earlier some comments about if this doesn't go forward, what will you do with all this land that you've acquired? Actually, I can testify that I've looked at the land records here in Jackson County, and this particular developer only owns 2 very small parcels that they have actually purchased. All of the rest of the land is owned by others. Now, they may have contracts to purchase it. You know, they'll stand up here and they'll say, we control that land. That's lawyer speak for I have an option to maybe buy it. And so let's not feel too bad about this developer and how much all the property rights that they've invested. There are more property rights that are going to be harmed that already exist than the property right of someone to come in and maybe get a permit for a maybe something while we all watch them do this secretly. Thank you. I'll be glad to stand for questions.
Thank you. Questions for the witness? Yes, Senator.
So how many acres of land do the developers currently own? Do we know?
They own 2 parcels. If it's an acre and a half, I'd be surprised. There are 2 very small parcels up at the northern end, just on the south side of 150 Highway.
So you're telling me they own 2 acres?
It's actually about 90.
I'm sorry, it's about
90 of the proposed.
2 little pieces.
How much is a proposed site? How many acres?
200.
So they own 90 out of the 200.
No, they don't own that. That's the proposed site, though.
Right. So they're wanting to purchase 200 acres. They currently have 90. Is that correct?
I'll have to stand for what the mayor says, but according to the map I looked at, those would not be as big as 90 acres.
Okay. And was there ever a time where a community had veto power prior to this?
Well, we have
In regards to
we have the right now within a half a mile.
Within a half
That's what
mile.
the current statute is.
Okay.
And so this would just extend that to a mile.
Thank
By
you.
the way, just in answer to your question, this original proposal actually went all the way south to the Kansas City line to 155th Street. At that point, somebody must have pointed out to them that you can't build this within half a mile. And so now they have reduced their site by taking their southern boundary and moving it up to about halfway. So what's been lost in that discussion is now there are all these people between that landfill site and the southern boundary of Kansas City that are no longer in the landfill site that are going to be a stone's throw away from this landfill. What about their property rights?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? So refresh my memory. How much has actually been done so far on this landfill project? Have they broke ground? No. Okay.
No.
Okay.
They haven't, as far as we're aware, they haven't gone to MoDOT,
Okay.
MDNR to get their permit, to
Okay.
file for a permit. All they're doing is what happens in large projects like this, which is they're undergoing land assembly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Now we will hear from Chris Turnbow.
Good afternoon, Senators. I'm Chris Turnbow, the mayor of the city of Raymore. You've heard from our constituents, and it's obvious that their personal testimonies speak volumes. Over the last year, I've heard from thousands of people just like them. People who recognize that it would be reckless to build a landfill at this location, adjacent to schools and thousands of homes. The study Senator Cierpiot referenced confirms a landfill is not needed at this time. But much damage has already been done. Our city's progress, businesses, and residents have already been harmed by the threat of the landfill on our border. It is absolutely critical that impacted communities have a say in decisions that negatively impact our home values, our environment, and most importantly, our health and well-being for generations. During last year's session, many of you advised us that we should be resolving this regionally. Well, we have continued to try to engage with the city of Kansas City, sharing concerns and strategies that would put a stop to the landfill. However, those efforts have not resulted in a permanent solution, so we need you. Every elected official from the area supports this legislation, including all 3 Missouri senators whose districts are impacted by this proposal. From local school boards, mayors, council members, and county legislators to our state representatives and our U.S. congressional representatives all support this legislation, and I ask that you join them. Please support this bill so that we can continue to serve our residents the way we should as servant leaders with their best interests at heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yes, Senator Crawford.
Thank you for being here. Just a quick question. You're the mayor of
I am
Raymore.
the mayor of Raymore, yes.
And again, this would be outside the city limits, but I guess I'll just ask you the same question I asked somebody else. Have you, since you've been looking for solutions, have you thought about looking for other proposed sites and maybe pushing them or suggesting those? Has that been part of the conversation?
Sure. Yeah. Initially, it was part of the conversation, and then we just felt like we shouldn't push a problem onto another community. But there are areas that we believe are more remote on the fringes of the metropolitan area that would be better suited.
Well, now be easy there because I live in a rural area, and my trash and your trash are the same trash. So
I
just
understand.
just a comment, but I'm just talking about. I'm trying to find a solution. Actually, I would prefer that we weren't here trying to make this solution.
Sure.
But it looks to me like there might be some solution outside of the state capitol, such as maybe trying to facilitate a different.
Frankly, ma'am, we've tried on many occasions to put out strategies there that would help with the economic development of that area in a more substantial way, and we've run into roadblocks on those for some reason.
Okay, and I guess to me it's just like, can you not? And I know it's not necessarily the mayor's. But I mean, you probably don't want it in the city limits anywhere, would be my guess. But just somewhere where there aren't as many people. It looks like there ought to be a solution somewhere rather than here.
Well, frankly, we believe there are. In answer to your question, we have talked to some of the larger developers, the guys that do this for a living, not a brand new entrepreneur like what's happening here, who have teams of people that within a decade of the finish of their specific landfill, they will begin to look at airspace available for that particular site, or they will look at other regions of the area to site a landfill. And that is what they do for a living. They don't do transfer stations and then think they can put in a landfill.
Okay, and I guess we're just here because of the company we're dealing with, but it seems like maybe that might be an outside the building solution, but that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none. Bill.
Yes, honorable senators. I am Bill Baird. I am the mayor of the city of Lee Summit, one of the fastest growing cities in Missouri. We have nearly 105,000 citizens, and we are expected to grow by 35,000 more in the next 20 years. And the bulk of that would be on the south side of Lee Summit, where this landfill is being proposed. The proposed site for the landfill is technically within Kansas City, city of, on slivers of land between our cities that Kansas City annexed decades ago. But it is almost entirely surrounded by Lee Summit, Raymore, Grandview, and the impacts of this landfill would not be felt by the city in which it is located, but mostly by the neighborhoods and cities in the immediately surrounding area. There's not been much encouragement historically for the healthy development in this area on the extreme outskirts of Kansas City, but I think that working together, we can change that. When we can turn this into beautiful neighborhoods and healthy commercial centers. And you are hearing passionate pleas from many of our Missourians, most affected, the homeowners, the parents, the children who live there and have to breathe the air and deal with the unpleasant conditions that would come with this. They feel powerless as far as having their voice heard. And, you know, when it comes to their family's life and their potential health, this bill gives them a voice to voice their real concerns. And it also gives the cities a voice because 150 leads into and out of the proposed landfill, goes right into Lee Summit. Packer garbage trucks would line 150, putting off heavy emissions, damaging our roads, littering our highways, and we greatly value this corridor. We're putting memory care on this care center we've approved, and it's being built as we speak. Grocery stores, restaurants on this 150 corridor. And so a failing to amend this statute would allow the... Thank you all.
Thank you. Where I live, there's a landfill probably close to 15 miles past my house, and those trucks come by our house on a daily basis. And I can also agree with you and attest to the fact that it does tear up the roads. And they've had to come through and repair roads on a regular basis. So are there any other questions for the witness? Okay. Seeing none, thank you. Norman?
Honorable Senators, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Norman Larkey, and I'm the mayor of the city of Belton, which is about a mile and a half west of the proposed site. I'm here representing 25,000 citizens of the city of Belton. The harm to this housing market and negative impact this proposed landfill is already having on our economic vitality as the region hurts Raymore, Belton, and all of Cass County. Those impacts would multiply without legislation change and a landfill on our borders. This legislation is not protecting the property rights of residents in Belton, Raymore, Lee Summit, and the entire community and everybody in this state. I ask you to do the right thing and support Senate Bill 739 for us and your communities and all of the people in Missouri. I have not heard from anybody from the Monheiser Group about this proposed landfill, and I would support a regional effort, and I'm willing to talk to anybody about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for the witness? Senator?
I have a question. Do you guys all have their contact information? Do you know who the point person is to talk to them? I mean, who? Okay.
Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, and anybody else in opposition? Didn't that lady want to speak? Anybody else in support? No, that's, you have every right to speak. Make sure you fill out a witness form also. Yes, pull your microphone a little bit closer to you, please.
First of all, I'm a landowner, I'm a farm owner in southeast Missouri in Senator Hawley's district. And
excuse me, would you please state your name?
Oh, my name is Terry Clark, and I'm a resident of Raymore, directly across the street from the landfill. I'm also a landowner, farm landowner in southeast Missouri in Senator Bader's district. I know what environmental issues from runoff does to farmers because out of my family, probably 75% down there who are farmers have died from cancer as a result of environmental runoff regarding fertilizer and so forth. I'm also Macy's grandmother, and I'm the one that has cancer. I had a kidney transplant. One of my relatives from down in southeast Missouri gave me a kidney 17 years ago. 17 years ago, I was in a wheelchair. I wasn't able to walk. I was on the borderline of welfare. And I raised my daughter, who met her lovely husband, who is suffering health issues as a result of environmental issues also. I want to share with you what happened at my home last night. My grandson here has severe asthma. You can tell by his round face that he takes excessive amounts of steroids and on inhalers. He spent the night with me so that Macy could speak, and I was going to take him to school today, but unfortunately, school was canceled due to the weather. He had an asthma attack so severe. I'm shaking. Give me a second. He had an asthma attack so severe that I thought I was going to have to rush him to the hospital. I called his mother, who's in Mexico. I called his dad. I was beside myself. Imagine what that's going to do, the air quality to my grandson. I'm on immunosuppression, and we live a stone's throw away. There's one street separating us from the potential landfill. I am shocked beyond measure that the senator wasn't aware that there was a school right across the street within walking distance, closer to where I live. I'm also shocked that no one has ever talked to you guys about harassment. My daughter, who is vocal about this landfill, myself, who's been very vocal, as a real estate agent of 25 years, I'm in the top 5% in the Kansas City area. We sell between $12 and $20 million worth of real estate a year. I'm no novice. I have a property listed currently. All I'm telling you is facts, not hearsay, nothing else. I have a property listed right across the street from that proposed site. That property value has dropped $75,000. That same property, a year before this was announced, sold for $85,000. That same floor plan in that same street sold for $85,000 over. The people have been making, since they've already moved out, $35,000 in house payments, in addition to the $75,000 that they've lost. And do you want to know every reason for the cancellations on those contracts? The landfill, the landfill, the landfill. My property value has plummeted. It is, I can't state the statistics because I had no intentions of speaking today, but I know that it is around 25% loss in value so far, and we don't even have a landfill in Creekmore community. With regard to harassment, since my daughter's vocal, and since I've been very vocal as a resident who services the residents' property values and their well-being in Raymore,
We're going to have to cut you off. I gave you a little extra
it's pretty
time.
important.
Okay.
We've been harassed.
Okay. Question, Senator Crawford.
Finish.
So,
because in fairness,
Thank
I
you.
asked the other one, and I want to ask you
I
too.
appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I love this senator's spunk. I loved it. Thank you. My daughter, who I've been opposed vocally, and as has my daughter and the mother of Macy, Mrs. Monhuser stated before a previous hearing that she had a partner with the name of Scott Higgs.
Okay, what I really want to ask
they-
is the harassment.
Scott Higgs's fiance, who is very good friends with Mrs. Monhuser, has threatened me and my family on social media that's documented. She has no reason I have a one-way street. She drove up my street. There's 2 houses between my daughter and I. She took out her photograph while we were standing outside visiting with the neighbors who are witnesses to the effect, and took pictures of my grandchildren and of my daughter and I, and smirked at us and drove off. I have her truck on my camera.
Okay, thank you for that. For the record, I don't like harassment on either side of the
appreciate
issue.
that.
Thank you.
That's what prompted me to talk.
Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you. Next witness.
Hi, thank you for having me here today. My name's George Constable. I own Constable Sanitation, which is a residential garbage business that hauls in this particular area. I'm here to support the bill. As a hauler, I haul primary residential around 35,000 homes. In the city of Raymore, Greenwood, Pleasant Hill, about 40% of Lee Summit, and 10,000 homes on the Johnson County side, which all for this proposed landfill are in that particular area. And I'll just discuss operations a little bit for you, just so you know the infrastructure and how our business operates in comparison to what is pre-landfill. So most of the Raymore trash actually goes to a facility that is a transfer station located 7.5 miles from the proposed landfill. And they take it to a landfill that is regional, either Warrensburg, Johnson County. I don't necessarily follow their business, but it is taken to a location that impacts less residents. As far as the Pleasant Hill and Greenwood, which is off 150 highway, that is taken to another transfer station that is 15 miles from the proposed landfill. And although I'm in the garbage business, I can never say there's not a need for landfills, but I'm not aware of any study that says there is a need at this location. And I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure you both fill out a witness form, okay? Anybody else to testify? Anybody to testify for informational purposes only? Sir, did you wish to testify? Come on up. Sir, are you testifying in support or in support of the bill? State your name, fill out a witness form. 2 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Robert Jones. 18 months ago, I became a resident in Cierpiot, Missouri. As my wife and I looked at this place to move, we lived where we lived prior to that for 25 years, and now we were.
Can you turn your microphone on, please?
Thank you. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. Again, my name is Robert Jones, a resident at Creekmore. My wife and I, after raising our family, looked for a place to retire. And after our research and looking at the development plans and doing all that, we built a house in Creekmore. We're in that northeast corner of the Creekmore division, which is in that 0.8 of a mile boundary from the landfill. We're one of the closest houses to that since we're up there in that corner. We have a community pool. I have a neighborhood that's full of children. That's one of the reasons we really love it. We sit outside and we watch those children play in the street and in their yards. We have, 4th of July potlucks. And we'd really, I don't know that this would affect me as much at my age and everything in 10, 15 years down the road. But 10, 15 years down the road, these kids are just going to be becoming teenagers. I had to come here today and ask for the support of this bill so that we don't negatively affect their health and welfare as they grow up. They deserve so much. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, you may begin.
Hi, my name is Todd Burke. There you go. My name is Todd Burke, and I'm also a resident of Creekmore, friend of Mr. Jones here. And I think the biggest thing I can say is, just to speak as I just recently moved in as well 2 years ago. Just started on my mortgage, trying to pay it down, right, and all those kind of things. And what I can say for people that I've spoken to is that they're just scared. They're really scared. They're scared about their property values. They're scared about their health. I think one of the big contrasts from that was mentioned as I listened from the previous dump that was in Lee Summit and the development around that to what's now is the dump was there, the Lee Summit dump was there first, and then development grew towards it, where this is already a developed area. and, you know, people don't have that opportunity. They got to make a choice to move close to the Lee Summit landfill. These, our neighbors won't get that choice, and the people in the perimeter of this area, many of them are landowners that are inside the rectangle of land. They don't want to sell their property. They want to keep their land, and they're scared as well. So, you know, I just ask you to support both Bill 739 and 769. I thank Senator Cierpiot and Senator Brattin and Representative Hatton for their leadership, and all the city and council members that have came out to speak for it. Their leadership has been very visible, and we really appreciate that as a resident of Creekmore, who has, I feel like, one of the biggest, you know, biggest price to pay if it would go in. So thank you for the time.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here today. Is there anybody here to testify for informational purposes only? Come forward. State your name, fill out a witness form, please.
Out of curiosity, how long do I have?
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Okay. All right. My name is Renee Trenshaw. I am a professional engineer, and I work for a company called SCS Engineers. We are a landfill, I work in landfill design and siting. I've been doing this work for 12 years. I do work in the state of Missouri, and I love talking about landfills. They're a really interesting piece of infrastructure. And I am here today mostly to, I guess, answer questions that you may have. I know that there's been a lot of questions asked earlier about different types of expectations from MDNR, from Missouri, what the expectations are, and when you actually go to the public with things like that. And I would love the opportunity to be able to talk about that. So I don't know, let's see. For MDNR for permitting, typically when a landfill developer approaches us as a consulting firm to help site a landfill, we go through a really rigorous process. There is never a perfect place to site a landfill. If you look at a map of all of the restrictions and expectations from the state about where you can actually put landfills, there's never a perfect spot. And almost always you have these huge zones of exclusion because of different things underneath the state. I won't list them all. And another component of that is we go through this process. We talk to developers about how you site a landfill, how you go about it, and then we look at property throughout whatever area that they're targeting. Following that, we go through a process of checking to see whether or not that site is viable. We do like a go, no-go decision. We check for critical infrastructure, critical things that are like, this is a hands down no. The other side of that is we decide if there's anything that could be of question. Is it something that can be engineered around? Can we provide something that will provide a solution to whatever that concern is? And this process takes years. Following that, I'm done. We have questions.
You said that there's really no perfect spot for a landfill. Is that what you said? Mm-hmm. But wouldn't you agree that there are spots better than other spots for a landfill?
I believe that their landfills are a critical part of our infrastructure.
Sure.
And that there are certain places where a landfill can be better or worse. But I also know that there is a financial impact when a landfill is hauled. You also have other infrastructure that has to be built to support a landfill farther
Sure.
away.
Okay. Now, have you worked for Jenny? I believe that's her name.
Mm-hmm. SCS is one of the firms that was hired to help with the landfill siting for the Modifies.
So, and that's who you work for?
I work for SCS Engineers, so
Okay.
the Modifies hired my company to do this work.
Okay, and that's how you became involved. Mm-hmm. Okay. Any questions from what's left of the committee?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Make sure you fill out a witness form. Senator Brattin, would you like to add anything else?
Well, Madam Chair, I just want to thank you for the length of time you've given this this bill. It's extremely vital and important. Just to clarify, from the get-go, the first question I asked when I was made aware that there was a landfill proposal was to talk to the Modifies and see what we could potentially do, where other site locations we could put something. Nobody's disputing the need for a landfill. We know we need them. This is not the location for a landfill, and that is where the dispute occurs. I'm sorry that they've potentially invested money into this proposed site, but this will be a detriment to my community, as you've heard. I do apologize if people get heated and they get very upset about this, but this is their livelihood. This is their investment and their future for their children and their well-being for their health. So everything that you've heard, I just I thank them for coming up. I thank you for this time, and I hope that this body as a whole, both chambers, move this forward to protect my community. Again, this is already in statute for over 52 years. We heard testimony that no, this is kind of churning over new ground, and there hasn't been this sort of oversight. This oversight has been in place. The legislature saw the need and necessity for the regional discussion, for that veto power of local communities. And this is just making sure that it's up to date with the times. They have not started the process. This is not going forth before DNR. Our local area has done several town halls, of which the Modifies and the landfill developers never showed up. So when I heard testimony that they've had the town halls and only 50 people showed up, well, I know we had a standing room only, and they never even showed up to give testimony or to get input from my community, which was going to be detrimentally harmed by this location. So I just wanted to kind of clarify some things and misinformation out there. So thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you very much.
Well, thank you, Senator. And I'd just like to say have a great afternoon. And local government and elections is now adjourned.